Follow me up these stairs, we'll take a look at a cut and fill stope.
I'm glad I got a back ray.
A good breeze up there.
That's traffic. That's pretty. Keep going so people.
This? Yeah, it's battery operated.
Down there, didn't we?
Pretty cool, huh, folks? Okay, this space that we're standing in right here, this is not a cavern, it's not a cave, it's not a natural opening of any kind. This used to be solid rock. It's all been mined out. In 1877, the U.S. Army sent a cavalry patrol out here. This was Arizona territory at the time. They camped up on top of a mountain up here. And the guy that was in charge of that, it was a lieutenant. His last name was Dunn. He was a geologist by education, and he found a natural opening up there. You guys felt that air as we were coming up the stairs here? Well, that's coming in through that natural opening way up on top of the mountain. We put a fan up there, 50 horsepower fan, and it's blowing fresh air from outside. But anyway, he climbed in that natural opening, and this is what he saw right up here. You see this dark rock right up here? That's a galena lead. It's a lead ore. He knew from his education that where you find galena lead, it's likely that you can find some silver too. So he chipped off a bunch of that rock and he put it in burlap sacks, and he took it back out to Fort Bowie. It's about 90 miles from here in Bowie, Arizona. Back then it was an outpost for the U.S. Army. His commanding officer back there was a captain, and he was also coincidentally a geologist by education. His name was Rucker. Well, they got to looking at that ore that he broke off in there, and they knew they had something kind of special, so they sent it out to San Francisco for assay. It came back so rich that both those officers resigned their commission in the U.S. Army. They went out to Prescott, which was the territorial seat at the time, and they filed a claim on this side of the mountain. They didn't have any money to start mining operations, so they went out to San Francisco and to get somebody to financially back them, and they came across a banker back there. His last name was Bisbee. They came out here and started digging holes, started getting rich. This was the very first mine, and that's where they came into this stope area right up in there. And they came through that natural crack up on top of the mountain, and they mined all that out up there, and then they mined along this shelf right here. And they took all that top material out. Then that's when they cut that 30-degree incline shaft that goes all the way down 700 feet, and then they started mining up. And when they got to this level here, they came in right down there. You see that's where my light is back in there? And they came in here and then they mined all this part out. This is called a cut and fill stope, S-T-O-P-E. There are two types of stopes. If they could work in an area like this where this limestone could hold up the mountain by itself, and it could in here, see how they left that pillar? Just to hold up the mountain. They knew what they were doing, folks.
Yeah.
If they could work in an area like this where they didn't need to timber it up, they'd just come in here and work. And two men would work in here, 2 guys on day shift and 2 guys on nights. This is one of hundreds of stopes underneath Bisbee. This mine alone is one of the smallest mines in Bisbee out of the 29 mines. This one has 140 miles of tunnel in it, just this one. If you add them all up, there's 2,400 miles of tunnels underneath Bisbee. There are hundreds of these working stopes all over the place, and this also is a small stope. If you were to go one level up and all the way to the back of the mine, we've walled it off back there. But actually, that tunnel goes around in a big circle for about a mile underneath the mountain and comes back around into this tunnel. But if you were to go one level up from that loop back there, there's a stope in there that they call the ball field. It's big enough to play a football game in. Yeah, it's incredible. This is where they got all the good ore. They didn't get it out of the tunnels. The tunnels were simply an avenue to get to these deposits like this. What were they looking for? Look at that blue-green rock on the wall up there where my light is. That's malachite and azurite. That's copper ore. That's pretty high-grade ore right there. And that's a nice specimen, but check this one out again. This one we looked at before. See the malachite and azurite in the middle of that gray galena rock? If you look down below it, see that orange rock right there?
Yeah.
That's hematite. That's where the gold's at.
We get up there now.
And, if I'd have brought a ladder, I'd let you climb up there and chip me some of that off. If they needed to shore up, if they were working in a place that was unstable or the ground was heavy, they built another stope like this. It's called a square set. It's a timbered stope. And all this wood was pre-cut on the surface in the wood shop, and they were all exactly the same size, and it came down as a kit. 2 men could build one of these in short order if they needed to. If they're working in like a really unstable area, this is what it would look like. They could build them on top of each other, next to each other, whatever, but they built them all the way up to the back of the mine and used wedges to keep everything tight. We still use a lot of wedges in here. When we came around that bend down there and you saw all those tools and all that stuff, normally you can see down 100 feet to the next level, but we're having to replace some of those old 100-year-old timbers back there. And you saw that broken rock laying around back there? Thank you, I got to blow that up a couple months ago. It was fun. Anyway, if they needed to build one of these, 2 guys could put it together pretty quick. But the first thing they needed to do when they came into their work area, those 2 men, was pick up about 50 tons of broken rock laying in their way. And that was left by the prior shift. The last thing that the miners did at the end of their shifts, and there were 2 shifts, night and days, they were separated by a few hours, but the first thing that the miner had to do was come in here, pick up that rock, because the last thing that the last shift did was light the fuses on their dynamite, then they went home. So once you got that rock belt hauled out of here, if you needed to build one of these, you could put one of these up pretty quick. Then this became your working area. You don't have to. And they'd spend the rest of their day drilling a series of holes into this rock 7 feet deep. 26 holes altogether. They loaded 22 of them full of dynamite, and I'll explain that to you when we get back. It sounds kind of confusing, but it really makes a lot of sense. Well, I'll show you a blast face when we get back there. Let me get back over here. Now, in the early days when they cut that tunnel, and when they came in and opened up this upper part of this stope, when they came in through there, this was the first drill bit, folks. It's just a cold chisel with a knife point edge on it. And remember, they did this by candlelight. They had 2 candles burning in here. And the way that they would start out was they'd take a 4-pound sledgehammer called a single jack, and they'd have to strike that steel and turn it, strike it, and turn it, and keep doing that until they got the hole scarred, and that's called collaring the hole. Once they got the hole collared, they went to a longer steel, and they got a bigger hammer. 12-pound sledgehammer called a double jack. Where you going? You getting out of my way? You're not in my way, sweetheart. This became a 2-man operation at this point, by candlelight. One guy's got to hold this steel and turn it, while the other guy goes after it with a 12-pound double jack.
I got trust issues. Yeah.
Right. Well, I told you when we were in the mines, all these guys always worked with a partner. Some of them stayed together for a couple of years, if they worked well together. They knew not to hurt each other, because if they hurt each other, production went down, bonus money went down, and that's a point I'm going to get to right now. If you talk to any guys that were real miners, stope miners or cross-cut miners, or even that guy up there, he's my cousin, he's on overtime. He's called a raised miner. His job is to mine straight up, 100 feet to the next level. That way they could drop their rock down that chute that he cut down to this level, where we could haul, you could haul it out. Now the miners that worked in the stopes here, stope miners, they were going after the real valuable rock. But let me let you in on a secret, they didn't care. Miners don't care what kind of rock they're moving, because they were paid a flat fee of $45 a day the company would set a standard for those 4 men, 2 on days and 2 on nights, to move so many tons of rock out in that 2-week period. If they went beyond the standard that the company set, they got paid $10 a ton per man bonus money. That guy, the raise miner, and the cross-cut miner that cut the tunnels and laid the trap, they weren't paid by the ton, they were paid by the foot. He was expected to go straight up 7 feet every day. Cross-cut miners cutting the tunnels, they were expected to move forward 7 feet every day. If they went farther than that, they got paid $100 a foot bonus money.
Oh.
Yeah, man, these guys, so you didn't want to get nobody hurt, because if you take one guy out of that 4-man crew, everybody just lost bonus money. So everybody was really pretty careful, as careful as you could be. Now initially underground, there was always a lot of injuries. The rocks fell on people, they got buried, some guys blew themselves up with dynamite, that sort of thing. The biggest killer early on, when these drills came underground, these pneumatic jack drills, was silicosis. There's a lot of silica in this rock here. If you stir that up into a fine dust, it's basically breathing glass. And they would breathe it in, they would cut their lungs up, and they were dying in their 40s and 50s. They initially were treating them for tuberculosis. When they realized it was silicosis, the company that makes these drills, it's a company called Gardner Denver, they're out of Minnesota. They modified them and they put water jackets in them. They started pumping water through these steels all the way out the end and washing the drill dust out of the hole, and that solved the silicosis problem. Then they only had to worry about blowing themselves up. My wife's father was killed in one of these mines here in town in 1961. He looked down the shaft, down came the cage. So it was inherently a dangerous business. But some of these guys with that bonus money, they were making $450 at the end of two weeks. They were making $2,000 cash money, bonus money on top of that. $5 grand a month in 1974. That's how they kept them down here. I think I went over it all. That hum you hear is from that fan we put up there. Everybody asked me because I forget to mention it because I can't hear it. Are there any questions about stope mining? All right. Let's go back down and get on the train. We're gonna go all the way to the back of the mine. At that point, we'll be about 1,000 feet underground and we can get off and take a little walk.